the harvest season in northern Vietnam during the 1980s, 1990s. The early autumn mornings in the northern countryside of Vietnam during the 1980s were always wrapped in a light mist, soft and silver, like the breath of the earth itself. The air carried the smell of ripened rice, a scent that was sweet, rich, and unmistakably rural, the smell of months of labor now ready for reward. Across the fields, the golden waves of rice swayed gently in the breeze, catching the first rays of the sun like liquid gold rippling over the land. The villages back then were still simple and quiet. Small houses with thatched or tiled roofs lay scattered along the dikes, surrounded by bamboo hedges that whispered in the wind. Roosters crowed from every corner, and the rhythmic sound of wooden pestles pounding rice echoed faintly from distant kitchens. Life moved at a slower pace, guided by the cycle of the seasons. When the harvest time arrived, every heart beat with the same rhythm, the rhythm of joy and exhaustion, of hope and gratitude. By dawn, the fields were already alive with people. Men carried sickles slung over their shoulders, their shirts faded from years of sun and rain. Women wore conical hats, their faces covered with scarves to block the dust and heat. Children ran barefoot along the dikes, laughing and calling to one another, their voices ringing like small bells across the vastness of the countryside. The entire village seemed to gather in the fields, forming a living mosaic of colors and movement. The soundscape of harvest was a symphony of rural life. There was the whisper of scythes slicing through stalks, the rustle of straw, the thump of bundles hitting the ground, and the calls exchanged between rows. Occasionally, a cow lowed from the far edge of the field, or a buffalo snorted as it pulled a heavy cart. Overhead, white egrets circled and cried, waiting for the insects that would scatter from the cut rice. In the 1980s, mechanical harvesters were still rare. Most of the work was done by hand, relying on cooperation among families. Men cut the rice stalks, women gathered and tied them into sheaves, and children carried the bundles to the threshing area. There, the golden piles would grow higher and higher until they looked like miniature hills gleaming under the sun. The air was thick with the scent of chaff and straw, and the workers' clothes were damp with sweat. Yet, amidst the fatigue, there was laughter that carried the warmth of kinship and shared labor. Lunch was often eaten right in the fields. Someone would spread out a mat under a tree or beside a haystack, and everyone would sit together, their faces flushed and happy. The meal was simple: rice with salted eggplant, boiled vegetables, or a few pieces of dried fish grilled over a small fire. But nothing ever tasted as good as those meals in the harvest fields. Perhaps it was the hunger from hard work, or perhaps it was the sense of being part of something bigger, the collective effort of the village to gather the fruit of their labor. In the afternoons, the sun would burn more fiercely. The fields shimmered like a vast golden sea. The air trembled with heat, and yet, no one stopped. Old men wiped their brows, women bent lower over the sheaves, and young men shouted to one another as they loaded the carts. The wooden wheels creaked under the weight of grain, and the buffaloes trudged slowly along the dirt paths, their backs glistening with sweat. Every trip from the field to the threshing yard brought a sense of triumph. Threshing was another story, loud, dusty, and full of energy. People would spread the sheaves on a flat ground and beat them with sticks, or tread them with the hooves of buffaloes. The golden grains would scatter, shining in the sunlight like tiny jewels. Children loved this part the most. They would jump and laugh, chasing after the stray grains, pretending to be little farmers themselves. The air was filled with laughter and dust, and the smell of fresh rice husk clung to everything. By late afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the bamboo groves, the entire landscape took on a warm, honey-colored glow. Smoke from the cooking fires began to rise from the village rooftops, curling lazily into the amber sky. Women washed their faces at the communal well, men stacked the last bundles of straw, and children chased each other through the fields that were now dotted with stubble. The day's work might have been long and tiring, but it ended with the satisfaction of accomplishment. Evenings in the harvest season were magical. The sky turned a deep indigo, and the first stars appeared above the silhouette of the banyan tree near the communal house. The air cooled down, carrying the smell of ripe rice and damp earth. Families gathered in their yards, talking, laughing, sometimes singing folk songs about farming and love. Somewhere, an old radio crackled with news, or a nostalgic song from the 1980s, perhaps something by Trin Kong Son or Puang Tan, blending with the chirping of crickets. The harvest was not just about collecting grain. It was a celebration of life, of endurance, and of community. In those years, Vietnam was still recovering from hardship. The economy was modest, but the spirit of the people was strong. Each sack of rice meant security, each pile of straw a promise of comfort for the buffaloes and warmth for the family. The golden fields symbolized hope, the hope that no one would go hungry, that the coming year would be better. During the 1990s, small changes began to appear. Wooden carts were replaced by bicycles carrying sacks of rice. Later, motorbikes rumbled down the village roads, leaving trails of dust behind. The younger generation began to dream beyond the fields, some leaving for cities, others for foreign lands. Yet, every harvest season, they returned home, drawn by the familiar rhythm of the sickle and the scent of ripened rice. Standing on the dike, one could look over the vast plain stretching to the horizon, a patchwork of yellow and green divided by winding paths and narrow canals. The Red River shimmered in the distance, reflecting the sunset like molten copper. Somewhere, the sound of a drum signaled the call for evening prayers at the communal house. It was a timeless picture, one that had existed for centuries and would live on in memory long after machines replaced human hands. Those who lived through the harvests of the 1980s and 1990s still remember them vividly. The blisters on their palms, the laughter shared under the blazing sun, the smell of burning straw at dusk. All of it remains etched in their hearts. For them, the harvest was not merely work. It was a season of connection, a rhythm that tied them to the land and to each other. Now, decades later, when one drives through the modern countryside of the north, the fields are still there, but the rhythm has changed. Machines hum where once there were songs. Concrete houses stand where bamboo once whispered. Yet on certain days, when the wind carries the scent of ripe rice across the fields, it feels as if time folds back. The ghosts of the past reappear. Women in conical hats, children chasing dragonflies, men shouting cheerfully as they stack golden sheaves. The countryside still breathes, though its voice is softer now. For the people who grew up in that era, the image of harvest is forever a symbol of warmth and belonging. It speaks of the resilience of the northern farmers, their patience and their pride. It tells of a Vietnam that was humble yet full of grace, a land that gave life to its people and in return received their love and labor. As night falls over the quiet village, the stars shimmer above the rice fields, and the sound of frogs begins to echo from the ponds. Somewhere, a lantern glows faintly through the mist, marking the end of another day. The harvest is done, the barns are full, and peace settles over the land. The farmers rest, knowing that tomorrow they will begin again, repairing tools, tending buffaloes, and waiting for the next cycle of planting. The scene fades slowly, like an old photograph from the 1980s, a picture yellowed by time, but still alive with the colors of memory. It is a picture of sweat and laughter, of golden rice and brown earth, of a people deeply rooted in their land. The harvest season in northern Vietnam of those years was not only a moment in the agricultural calendar, it was a poem written by countless hands, a song sung by generations, echoing across the fields of time.